pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. So we're going to start off with a presentation from Peter Dolan from the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference. He's going to briefly go over what the Trail Conference has mapped out for us for 2 phases of the River Walk, which apparently, even before my time, has been something that the town has wanted to do. So this is, we have stage 1, and then we're working on stage 2. And then the group, the Park and Recreation Advisory Board will be presenting next week what they find about river walks and pedestrian walkways throughout the Hudson Valley, so we can combine the 2 and come up with a great plan. So without further ado, Peter.
Hello, I'm going to test the Zoom audio. I hope all the Zoom participants can hear me right now. So,
the light screen, you're good to go.
yep, perfect. All right, so I'm going to screen share and turn off my own computer audio so there's no echo. Great, I'm seeing thumbs up from the chat, so we're coming through loud and clear. All right, so momentarily the Zoom attendees and folks in the room should see a screen pop up. There it is, Powerhouse Park Trail Plan. So my goal today is to review this document. First, the scope of work that the Trail Conference was asked to cover, a peek at the document for those who haven't seen it yet, and then have time for questions about the process document as facilitated by our panel here. So moving forward. So this presentation, as a recap, I'm going to try to keep it fairly tight, hopefully no more than 15 minutes for my talking. And I'd like to cover first, out of the way, about the Trail Conference. I know we did cover this the last time I presented, but for anyone not present, I want to be able to introduce our organization and myself. Second. There we go, the scope of work and the plan document that was created as a result of that scope of work. Some recommendations, very high-level peek at what the document contains about things like bridge recommendations, the GIS mapping element of the project, some interpark connectivity that we explored, some additional resources for readers and for future contractors and builders to refer to, and then again, time for questions at the end. So about the Trail Conference. The New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, fundamentally, we are a nonprofit. Most of what we do is in support of that nonprofit public lands mission, and that involves developing, building, and maintaining trails, which we've done for over 100 years, since 1920. Protecting trail lands through support and advocacy, including the creation of Sterling Forest. The Trail Conference is very instrumental in preserving that land. Thank you. And then educating the public in the responsible use of trails in the natural environment. And today, I'm here in the capacity of supporting land managers through trail planning and assessment, which we do on and off over the 2,000 plus miles of trail that we maintain. Many people come to know us first through the maps we create. Increasingly, that's on a digital platform. But we also build trails through our Conservation Corps program. We conduct ecological stewardship activities. We publish books and hiking guides. And we run programming out of our headquarters office in Mahwah, New Jersey. So just about 20 odd minutes down the road from here. Me personally, I grew up very familiar with this area, spending time in Greenwood Lake. I joined the Trail Conference, hard to believe, over 12 years ago in 2013, and spent my first 7 years overseeing our New Jersey Trail program, so about 750 miles of trail there. I became the Trail Program Manager in 2020, and currently facilitate our activities over 2,000 plus miles of trail. And one of the things that I'm often called upon to do in that capacity is to create trail plans. And one of the most recent ones prior to this was a series of recommendations for the Palisades Interstate Park Conservancy and New York State, covering recommendations for 215 miles of trail in Harriman and Bear Mountain State Parks. So bringing all of that to bear here, the scope of work for this project was to look at the Powerhouse Park Trail, which I think most people, if not everyone, is already familiar with. But this is a repeat slide from our very first presentation. The goal was for the Trail Conference to conduct practical on-the-ground scouting to confirm the feasibility and produce some implementation guidance for a trail route, the ones notably produced as part of the Park Master Plan shown to the right. The goal was that we would conduct planning work and documentation, which could then be coordinated with the landscape architect to help produce a cohesive vision and conceptual mock-up for what the trail would look like. And our goal was to produce GPS tracks, on-the-ground flagging of routes, and a companion trail guidance document to help move the project from concept and planning to physical construction. So zooming in, for those not familiar with the exact route, this is the northern section of the project area. And in orange, you can see those are the lines that we started our exploration looking at. And then down in the southern portion of Powerhouse Park was this riverside walk here. The document that we created after exploring all these options, here's a peek at the cover of it. I see a few hard copies floating around in the room, which is great. But for anybody who doesn't have access to that, here's a closer look at the table of contents here. So we have a summary and just a broad overview of the project, but the real meat and potatoes is down at those segment descriptions. We have segments 1 through 5. The project was divided up into 5 segments based on distinct transitions from one tread or trail character to the next. And then we also explored east of the river some of the existing trails, walked things that were on the ground, and bushwhacked all the way up to look at a connection and the possibility of a connection to Route 106, which would connect into Harriman and Sterling Forest State Parks. We also ended by exploring different bridge location sites, pros and cons, and then a few different bridge types as well as vendors for each type so that the decision makers have a menu of options to look at and select from. So going down here, this is again a look into the document itself as a 2-page spread. We first walked the existing trails to get a sense of what we were working with. On the right, we have the final proposed trail route, and there you can see those 1 through 5 from the south working up to the north as they're numbered, which are the 5 segments that we split our recommendations up amongst. This is an example peek of what those recommendations look like. We have a written description of the route, broad numbers about the existing grade and tread width, the tread surfacing that we recommend, and then for each section, a few solutions and product or technical ideas that could work. Whenever we do these plans, we are aware of the fact that we are probably not the ones doing the construction. It's often a contractor, someone with a landscaping background. So we don't want to get too specific and lock people into a scope of work that they're either not familiar or comfortable with. So we try to give a few different options that capture the character we're looking for. So here, for example, we give some guidance on wheelchair accessible surfacing and pathways that the Trail Conference has worked on in other areas that we hope will guide whoever is selected to do the actual construction work towards something that's appropriate. Otherwise, we've seen in other areas, if all you know how to do is lay down wood chips, then every project is a wood chip trail. And if all you know how to do is pave, then every trail is pavement. And we wanted to make sure we gave good, concrete, no pun intended, guidance on what the tread surface and character should look like. For some of the more remote areas, you can see once we get into the woods, we move away from that more developed surfacing. So we have just more flagged routes through the woods. This is where we get into more hand tool trail conference style of rustic natural surface trail construction, much more similar to what visitors would expect if they're hiking in Harriman or hiking in Sterling. So it may be that some people turn around not wanting to go into that more rustic wooded section, but for people who like that experience, the northern section of the trail provides that. We also, on the right page, you can see we have some additional considerations, 1 or 2 routes with landmarks that we think are maybe as a future phase 2, or depending on the success of this initial construction, could be built to create loop opportunities or tie in some other landmarks and viewpoints that would be destinations for people. So that was, again, very high level peek at just 1 or 2 of the page spreads, but there are many more in the document. And then we also have bridge recommendations included. So we talked about first a few different options, 1 or 2 of which we rule out right off the cuff after taking a look at the site. We move on to our selected location on the right, as well as a quick snapshot of a flood hazard area overlay, just to get a sense of what permits and compliance might be required, as well as what, storm event challenges could be anticipated at this location, much of which is inevitable. Any location will have flood considerations. And then we move on to a few types of bridges, starting with prefabricated fiberglass composite style bridges on the left. On the right, we have steel trusses and some of the pros and cons of a steel truss versus, say, a fiberglass kit. And then for each one, as mentioned, you can see there's 2 or 3 vendors where we'd recommend as a starting point to solicit quotes and start contacting both the engineers and the construction folks who could give that site-specific guidance beyond the scope of what the Trail Conference normally does. This is the next page. You get a few other options. The one on the right shows a suspension bridge, which again was ruled out for the location that we finally settled on, but it was worth showing and explaining too that this is something that some sites do utilize, and here's why we decided not to do it here. Companion to the PDF written document, and arguably for planning and management purposes more important, is the GIS map that was created alongside the PDF document. So here's a zoomed in snapshot of the northern part up in the woods, which gives a sense of the different lines, the alternatives, the layers, and how we used specific GPS points to note where work was needed beyond just clearing of the corridor and basic tread work. So as one example, if you want to zoom in, that's the bridge crossing location. If you zoom in on that and you click it, you can see each one of those pins has a name, a short description of what it represents. And then for planning purposes, if you click that little go to button up top, it'll jump you right into Google Maps where you can pull exact coordinates and tie in with more map data that's not on the Google My Map that we produced. Park connectivity. This was something I think we got a little enthusiastic when you asked trail builders to go in the woods and bushwhack. We are going to go at it with full gusto. So we put a lot of energy into this one, but we were asked to look at possible connectivity on the east side of the river heading north. There's a very narrow corridor of land between the thruway and the river, and saying how feasible would it be to make a trail there so that hikers could possibly get off the train, walk north, swing onto public land, come back on state park trails, and then end their hike as a large loop, or some other configuration, go up and hike down as a linear trail. So we did walk that corridor. We noted areas of corridor constriction, where there were wet areas. You can see, like I said, we got a little enthusiastic and collected a lot of data about the entire length. Our intrepid explorers went full bushwhack mode and made it all the way up north to, you can see the park and ride up top. So it was possible. I'm sorry, over the what?
Can you get across to Dunning Overeast from the trail?
I'm not sure.
No.
Probably not.
No, not unless you go across to the
You know,
to the
Yeah,
bridge
yeah.
and walk down and around.
That's right.
Yeah,
Railroad tracks.
Yeah.
So this was a little kind of beyond the scope of our focus on Powerhouse Park, but while we were here, we wanted to give it our all and collect as much data as we could. So this map, again, there's a lot there, so I'll zoom in on one specific section to get a better sense of what it looks like. Here's a zoomed in section of the route that was followed in that really tight corridor, and you can see on the left the names of some of these data pins are things like Rocky and Steep Social Trail. One of them reads Cliffed Out and Forced into River. So there were definitely challenges with the right application of technology and resources. Very few things are impossible, but this is at least a starting point to get some feasibility studies and say, what would it take to make this a reality? So that data is also part of what we produced for this project. And then we end the document with additional resources. The goal here again of our document was to have something that could be used to work with contractors and future construction resources to build a trail in a way that feels consistent with a sustainable trail experience. So we wanted to give as many resources as possible for those future builders to draw upon. So we have first on the left, trail resources such as US Forest Service, standard trail plans and specifications that we refer to, a link to our landing page, which has much more for trail design and construction, trailblazing and maintenance, several resources from the federal government, USDA, about accessibility standards on trails, all the technical specific construction requirements that someone would need to build the trail that we've laid out here in this document. And then it ends with an appendix, which is Trail Standards and Structures Guide. So anybody who's reading this document and sees terminology they're not familiar with, we've captured most of that here at the end with lots of photographs to again give a very visual sense for a future builder of what we want this to look like, as well as a few pictures of people using the trail where we've done similar projects elsewhere to show the mixed use and how welcoming we want the trail character to be to visitors. That's followed up by more technical specifications, cross sections, notes about different soils, structures and substrates that would impact how to build the trail. And our secret, we call this our trail mix blend. So when you're ordering things like QP, quarry process material, this is the blend that we use that we know from experience locks up the best and requires the least long-term maintenance after being built. So that is where we end the document, and the hope is that it can be a great resource to continue going back to into the future for trail building knowledge and expertise, including some of the less technical things, just explaining the character and standards of more natural surface hiking trails with some photographs to match. With that, any questions?
So,
Okay.
just want to recap just a couple of key items, just to keep everybody in the loop. This study was paid for by a grant by the Greenway. We're a Greenway community, and so they gave us a grant for this, of which 50% is paid by the Greenway and 50% is paid by the town. Now, fortunately, volunteers and the people who work on this project count towards our expense towards this grant. So the highway department has been working with us in terms of clearing this area so that we can actually see what the stage one really looks like. So that's an important part of this process, and thank you, Rob. It's all mapped out and they're clearing it out. We've gotten permission from the DEC to do that, which is off the typical calendar. So we're working on that. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Group is looking at all of the different trails and walkways throughout the Hudson Valley, and will be giving us a report at the next meeting. So we'll be able to incorporate things that we see there that we think would fit in our community. So with that said, I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on that. Any other questions? Does the board have any questions?
No, I just like to say one thing.
Yes.
The town board is gonna have to decide what types of trails you want.
Yes.
Do you want paths with stone on them?
Yeah, we need to
And a
discern
marked
that.
thing?
Yep.
Or do you want a dirt path through the woods, that's a true hiking trail?
Right.
You have to decide, that's the decision, and now how much are you gonna spend per foot, per yard, per acre?
That again is a Greenway grant.
Which is gonna be, which will predicate the type of trail that you're gonna put in. If you're gonna have people walking down with wheelchairs, well, you're gonna have to think of a more expensive type treatment for the trail than just a path through the woods. So
Correct.
that's something that you guys will have to decide
Right.
on what.
That's the final plan.
Am I right there?
Yep. And how wide are you, is this plan? How wide is the trail? We talked about 5 feet?
For the parts that are gonna be,
Yeah.
for anything that is going to be compliant with those ABA guidelines and Forest Service Trail Accessibility Guidelines, we would recommend a minimum 48 inches. But there's, no such thing as too wide necessarily when it comes to that.
Right.
And all users, families like to walk side by side as well.
Right.
So, but 48 is what we would recommend looking at as a starting
Okay,
point.
4 feet.
And that's just on the west side.
I'm Maria May. I'm the chairperson of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, where we are looking at some recommendations, reading from your work. One question that we had that wasn't that clear when we, is what, I guess it's the same question that Rob had, the northern part where you're actually in the woods. Are you guys thinking of more of like leaving it sort of like a trail, or like, well, if we looked at some trails where they had like broad stones, but, it was mostly whatever trail, mostly, not paved with like concrete kind of thing. What
So-
were you thinking?
I believe our recommendation for that northern part past the powerhouse stage there was to transition into the woods into more of a natural surface trail. So luckily the terrain is flexible enough and inviting enough that it's certainly possible to make it accessible. The grades up to a certain point do allow that. There was some flexibility. I believe we mentioned the document about extending some of that surfacing to get to maybe one of the first waterside viewpoints. But for the most part, at the very least, as a starting phase one, preserving that as kind of the transition where getting to the stage is fully accessible. And then beyond that, it transitions into still very low barrier, but technically the surfacing would be natural.
Thank you. Impressive. Your parents will be proud. You know, his mom was the executive director of the Trail Conference. So the Trail
Yeah.
Conference is in his blood. So, I haven't walked up in a long time, and I was just wondering, how are you getting around the dam?
So the dam.
The dam is after, so the stage one goes from the parking lot
Mhm.
to the falls.
Right.
Before the falls and in between the falls and Powerhouse Park is where the bridge would go. So the question really is, if the bridge goes over, how reasonable is it that is there a trail that can go all the way to 106? Is that feasible? Because I know, talking to a lot of people from this area, there's some tight pinch areas that go along. And so I want to make sure that this is a viable pathway.
Yep. So first, I changed, I apologize, anybody watching Zoom who got whiplash watching me go through a bunch of slides quickly, but on the screen back there, the bottom right here where we see the yellow box is where the bridge crossing is proposed. And then the waterfall's all the way up here in the upper left. So that would really be kind of the topmost viewpoint. So that's where the dam is holding back all the water in the upper area. So most of the trail is down here, giving a view from the bottom up towards the waterfall rather than climbing all the way up to the dam. So for the feasibility of that long connector to 106, the first thing I always ask is, what is the trail character and standard you're looking for? Because anything is feasible if someone can make it. You know, by definition, one of our trail builders made it up, therefore it is feasible. But is it the appropriate character and standard to have people hopping on rocks? Do we want people going through areas that are this muddy? And once we set that standard of here's the trail character that we want to give to people, then we can revisit the idea of, is it possible to have a connector to that standard?
So my understanding from hiking is that various trails have various levels in terms of the difficulty.
Yep.
So it wouldn't, to your point, it wouldn't be difficult to have a very easy trail that goes from the parking lot to the falls.
Exactly.
And then a more difficult trail once you got over the bridge.
Yep. And one thing we try to do is be very intentional and communicate to visitors where those character shifts occur. So you don't have anybody accidentally going too far and facing a situation where they've already invested a lot of time, they've walked an hour, and now there's a rock hop that they're not comfortable with, they don't want to turn back. That's not a decision we want to put people in. I'm also on a search and rescue team, so I'm very cognizant of that element of connecting people with nature. So what we could do, for example, is have the bridge cross. My cursor is not showing it there. It's a very small cursor. We can cross right here. We could have people go up and maybe get a view of the waterfall from another angle and say, come on up, see it from there. Past this point, it's going to be a very different experience and have a clear, well-communicated shift in character to say from here, maybe it's a little more rugged, a little more adventurous, but let people do that at their own discretion. And that's all up to the risk and liability decisions that the land manager wants to make.
But it is feasible.
It
to,
is.
to
Yep.
hit the trails in Harriman from this point.
Yep, one of our folks was able to do it. So again, I'm not sure they came back saying they would recommend it. I know there were some areas where it was very close to the thruway as well.
Is there a way to cross the thruway?
We were not able to find anything to that effect. There were rumors of some possible things, but nothing we would feel comfortable directing people to, put it that way.
Okay.
And Bubbles? Does that go near the Bubbles?
That's the falls that they're referencing.
The what?
The falls that they keep talking about is Bubbles.
Augusta
No,
Falls is
no,
Bubbles.
The fall, you're talking about the falls up in here, right?
This is Augusta Falls. This is Augusta Falls, not Bubbles.
Bubbles is more, is further.
Oh, further north of that?
Yeah.
You know, it's just, we see people getting to it by walking the train tracks.
Mm.
And I don't
Yeah,
know
we
if this
wanna
will make it
avoid that.
easier for kids to
To
do
go
it
there, yeah.
where they're not observed or
Yeah.
create problems.
Right.
So this is my first time hearing the name Bubbles. That was not, it sounds like it's not
You
something that
can
we
access
included.
that from the other side. So
Excuse
if there's a trail over there.
If it's on the
you will
east
be able
side.
to access Bubbles from the other side.
Okay.
Are there any questions from the audience in Zoom
do.
land?
I see one hand up,
Okay.
so I'm gonna call on it. We have a number 1914.
Yes, it's me. Hi, good evening, Evelyn David.
Hello?
Yes,
We can
yes.
hear you.
Okay, great. Fantastic. This sounds really amazing. Question about a bridge. What, because I don't have access to Zoom to see the pictures, but I will, at some point get to City Hall and, or figure out how to access, exactly all your plans. The bridge, where is this bridge? What kind of bridge? I'm confused. But that's just me. No, I'm sure everybody else has got the drift. But where this bridge is going to be located where?
So the bridge, if you were to, if you start walking from the municipal parking lot and go along the Ramapo River, past the houses, past Powerhouse Park, and then you come, before you get to, and you just are following the river, not going into the woods like some people do to get to the falls. But as you get to
Right.
that and you look across and you see that big pipe, does everybody know what I mean by that big pipe? Yeah, okay, all right. So a little bit north of that pipe, there's an area that we all seem to believe would be the best crossing to go over.
Yeah.
I see. What does the pipe, is a drainage pipe, right? Or something?
Well, it's big enough to put a truck through it, so
Comes under the through.
Oh,
it
okay.
goes under the
All right.
thruway.
So
Yeah.
this would not obstruct the river flow in any way.
No,
I mean, the opening has to be wide enough, like the bridge that was constructed, down in the town. That bridge is widened opening. So you'd have to have an opening. I mean, is that what you're thinking? Wide enough so that it doesn't obstruct anything?
we have to get engineers, to be fair. We have to get engineers who would look at that to make sure that there would be no obstruction, and that if there was a
Right.
flood or there was debris, say like a tree coming down the river, it would be safe.
Yep.
We need to get people who are experts at that to do that.
And I'll
Right,
add,
so it doesn't get stuck under the bridge, like
Yeah.
they used to do. Yeah,
Right.
right.
I will say
It's an
they're,
important thing.
the engineers are very
Yes.
particular about the high water marks and the flood hazards. And my understanding from this site is that the span of the river is not so large that would require any mid-span support. So the river shouldn't have any new obstruction to flow and no
Right.
construction in the channel. So I would expect minimal flood interference.
But again, we need engineers to do that.
Yeah, you definitely do. Having gone through what we went through down where we are. Yes, okay, great. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That explains it. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Nothing else?
I was gonna say the Nurian, on your way to the Nurian Trail, there's already is a bridge over the Ramapo. It's a skinny part of the Ramapo. But
South.
Southfields, yeah.
Anything else?
Thank you, Peter. That was great. And we'll follow up on some other projects and see where we are in terms of getting some engineers to take a look at stage 2.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that said,
Find a log out, close out. You're running a meeting from that.
Oh, no, I'm not on me, but yeah, you got it. Then we'll just have you all back.
so thank you, Peter. Now we're going to move to the public hearing. I'd like to open, let me see what I have to do here. And I want to make a motion to open the public hearing on the introductory law entitled Property Maintenance to be opened at, what time is it?
7:29.
7:29 PM.
Second.
Thank you. So we're probably not going to vote on this tonight because we've had a lot of feedback from a lot of our residents about questions. Yes.
You vote the hearing, thank you for a second, I'm here to vote though.
All in favor? Thank you.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Yeah, so we do have a lot of commentary from local residents. So we thought this would be a good opportunity to hear what people have to say, and we can revisit this law and make sure that it's as tight as possible before we vote it into law, okay?
Sure.
So with that said, we have a commentary from Christy Apostolides, which we're not gonna read it into the record, but we are gonna give it to our attorney to review it. We have some other questions, so anybody on the board have questions for Ben? No, okay.
Don't, do we not have a property maintenance law now that's in the current zoning?
My understanding is we'd have code,
Right,
but the code does not necessarily have teeth, to make it simple.
okay,
Okay, so it's basically revisiting our code and making sure that we all agree that these are enforceable. How are they enforceable? If somebody is violating it, what are the repercussions for that?
gotcha.
So that is the purpose?
That's, we don't already have.
No,
Okay.
on some things, we
There's,
don't.
yeah, there's two chapters, and it's
Yeah.
pointed out in the email that we got. There's one chapter that deals with refuse and sanitation, and another that deals with vegetation, but not in the same way that this property maintenance
Right.
code does. And the other very important thing about this proposed local law that the other code chapters don't have is it allows the town to self-help after a due process hearing is given to a property owner who's in violation, and that owner doesn't abate the violations, then the board can hire a contractor or otherwise and enter the property and do the work. It's like an unsafe building proceeding, and bill the owner, and if that bill is not paid, then to levy the cost onto the owner's tax bill.
My understanding also is some of the things that aren't in the code that's clearly defined are things like a vacant property as well as the status of the condition of property. So if property is left to basically have not unpainted, in disarray, basically unkept, this also would give some ability of the town to talk to the landowner.
Yes. And if you like, these are thoughtful comments that were received in this email. I can address those. if you'd
Okay.
like. There's a concern with, what she says, some vague language, like the use of the word noxious and blight. And you can't be absolutely precise on everything in a code. And these are common adjectives that are in property maintenance codes.
Okay.
And there's always going to be discretion with the code enforcement officer in terms of, what gets enforced or not. And the other important thing here in that regard is, again, before the town board, before the town will actually correct the violation, the owner is entitled to a due process hearing before the town board and can contest the violations that have been assessed by the code enforcement officer. So I think that's a very important component of the code. She also makes a comment about, she points out the other two code chapters I mentioned earlier, which is, again, it's a correct comment, but this local law goes way beyond what's in those current codes. And in particular, both with respect to the sanitation and the vegetation, the purpose of those chapters is to prevent unsafe conditions or unsanitary conditions. And this property maintenance law goes further than that to address not just unsafe and unsanitary, but also blighted or aesthetic conditions. And
What you're saying though, but just to be clear, that's a subjective point of view.
It is,
Yeah.
but many things are when it comes to enforcement.
Uh-huh.
And again, we rely on our code enforcement officer to use good judgment. And once again, his judgment then, can be brought before the town board for that due process hearing. And then her last comment related to the excessively high vegetation. And the way this code is written, if that's the violation, the owner will get a violation notice and opportunity for one due process hearing at the beginning of the season. but not another due process hearing for subsequent violations. The reason that's in there is, I've had experience with another, town client where the same property owners would repeatedly fail to cut their grass. And it was a terrible eyesore for the neighbors. And so the town would have to go out there every month or every 2 months to cut the grass. And the board would initially have to hold this opportunity for due process hearing every time, which would delay the opportunity for the town to get out there and do the work, and the grass would just get higher and worse. So to address that, the board in that town amended their property maintenance code to put in that provision that only with respect to the excessive height of the grass and vegetation, you get a due process hearing once a year and not every time. If this board wanted to change that and say you get a due process hearing every time there's an excessive height violation, you could do that. But that was the practical experience of that one particular town, which is why that change was made. And lastly, she makes a comment about some people, have native plantings and they intentionally don't mow their meadows and forest edge habitats and that sort of thing. All good points. And again, I think that goes back to the code enforcement's discretion as to, how severe the violation is and what's the impact on the neighbors of that violation.
Okay.
I have a question. Is that completely around a property? So you have a house that's backyard also? If, say you don't want to cut your lawn anymore, you want it to go wild. It happens.
Yeah, and some people
right.
want that. Yeah.
Right. Is it just streetscape, sidescape, rear, the entire property? How do you manage something like that?
The idea is to mitigate adverse impacts on the neighbors. So if it's like behind somebody's house and nobody sees it and it's not attracting, vermin and that sort of thing, then I'm sure the code enforcement officer will let that go. He won't enforce against that.
Okay.
So can you elaborate a little bit on what a vacant property is and how the law applies to that?
Well, vacant property is one that, has no structure on it.
What if
And
you have a property that has a structure on it that's just been sitting there?
like an abandoned structure?
Yeah, well, it's not abandoned. Somebody's been sitting on it for 5 years and it's falling apart and they got a big sign out saying for sale, but it doesn't get sold. What
Yeah,
happens
but
then?
the structure is abandoned and that nobody lives there and it's deteriorating.
Correct. Yeah. What happens then?
Well, with respect to the structure itself, that could be an unsafe building. That's a different chapter in the town code. And through the same process, the town board could order that structure be removed if it is unsafe to the public. But in terms of the site itself, the exterior of the building, all of the provisions with respect to the grass and debris or litter and junk vehicles, they all would be covered by this local law.
So, an example, there is an abandoned building that's falling apart. It's been like that for 10 years. It's been declared to be unsafe to the point where the fire department can't go into it, even if there's a fire. So it's totally unsafe. According to this law, the town can order it to be demolished.
Yeah, well, this law wouldn't apply to demolishing and removing that structure. The town has a separate chapter in the town code called unsafe buildings.
Do we have that?
Yes, and that chapter could be used to order that the building be demolished and removed, and if the owner doesn't do so, then the town could hire a contractor to do that and assess the costs against the property.
Okay, so that's one example. Another example is, what if you were to have, and I'm only bringing this, that's not necessarily our town, but just if things happen. What if you have a store front that's been empty for years with a big sign in it saying for rent? Is there any recourse on the town's part to say to the landowner, you might have the wrong formula here? maybe you should lower your rent.
No.
I didn't think so. Just thought I'd ask. Okay, but is there any, so basically, as long as the landlord is attempting to rent that space and keeping that space up to make it still attractive and in good condition, there is no recourse on the part of the town.
I don't believe so.
Okay,
Certainly
I'm just
not-
asking.
Certainly not pursuant to this law.
I mean, I don't think necessarily that they even need to make an attempt to rent it,
It's true.
as long as it's been kept up aesthetically. and
No,
it's
that's
not a
correct.
hazard.
Good to know, all right.
Taxes are paid.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they're paying their taxes and all
but
that.
whatever they want to do with the
Okay.
building is up to them.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, those were my questions.
Okay.
Any other questions from the floor here? Okay, you have to get up and go up there
We
and
have to
tell
step it
everybody
up?
who you are and hit your button.
I didn't. Oh. This button, okay? Versus this button? Okay. Sue Sure, Clinton Road. Sorry, the world is not made for short people. Animals, I did not really see something like animals like chickens. I specifically said I live on Clinton Road because we have had an issue there, and about animals, about numbers of chickens, ducks, geese, roosters. And I do understand people's rights to have a few chickens and eggs, but what's the line for being in a community for amount and the kind of facility that the animals are kept in? And I didn't see anything in that
I
code that
believe we
talks
have a
about it.
separate
What?
code for that.
Yeah, there's nothing in this proposed law that deals with, the way that animals are kept in cages or the size of the yard, for instance, where you have animals.
Or numbers, yeah.
Correct, yeah, that's really wasn't the purpose of this particular local law. I do think, I need to double check, I do think there is reference to, there's reference to noxious odors and sounds, or certainly, could apply to chickens if you have a lot of them. I know that's in the code, but in terms of those other issues you raised, that really wasn't the appropriate for a property maintenance.
So we don't have a code that necessarily, we don't have a new code that discusses that,
We have a separate
A
code.
separate code.
that we have already.
Yes.
Okay. I think you asked some of the questions that I had that had to do with vacant buildings and what the town can do about buildings that are sitting there for a very long time and are visual problems in addition to being problems. As you said, the fire can't go in it. And we've seen not be able to do anything about that. And do we have a code that will allow us to do something like that?
Apparently we do.
So it's something we could start doing,
Yeah.
looking
There's
into.
a code, and I think the building you're implying about, they did take a section that was unsafe off that building. What is standing now, I think, is designated as structurally sound. And you may not like what it looks
Right.
like, but it's structurally sound and it's fenced in. The whole property is fenced in per requirements of town code to keep people from entering the property.
Right. But then there are implications for visual and what a building like that means to people in the town.
I don't speak for the board, but I speak for myself. You may like to look at a Picasso, and I may think it's just a pile of paint. Pile of paint. One person's beauty. I'm sure the owner of Red Apple West thinks it's beautiful. And then he pays the taxes, right?
But but it's determined to be sound by the building inspector. Yes, so the building inspector,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's the point.
And as it deteriorates more, which it will. from
Right.
now on, you-
The building inspector has to determine that it is
Right.
unsound.
Yes, they'll be
Yeah.
taking pieces off and pieces off.
Yeah.
There's nothing on it. Or it's sold for 2.5.
1875.
187, like that.
Okay, are there any questions from Zoom land?
Hi, this is Michelle. I wasn't able to hear what Rob said, so I don't know if he might have answered my question, but what about a vacancy tax? I think that, I know in maybe some cities and other towns, it's possible to have a vacancy tax, like you're not being forced to rent your building, but if you're just gonna let it sit there vacant for 10 years, and be a detriment to the economic development of the town, some municipalities are able to impose a vacancy tax.
Are you talking about a vacant building? Fine.
Well, or vacant building, vacant storefronts. I mean, we were talking about that before.
Ben?
Yeah, I'm not aware of a vacancy tax. It doesn't mean that other municipalities don't have one or it's not authorized, but I'm not aware of that. I can check into that if you like.
I think we did do this some time ago, and we found out that there was a couple of municipalities that absolutely had
Yes.
language
actually
wrapped
have
around
to look
that.
at
I actually have spoken with the building inspector about it. And we've discussed some options. It's been discussed, Michelle.
Okay.
It's an ongoing discussion.
Yeah, I know we've been talking about it, as Dave said, on and off for a long time, so.
Guys, can we just wrap up the public comment? We're in the public hearing.
Yep.
Can we just do that and like?
We're still in the
move
public
on?
hearing? Okay.
Yeah, so.
Sorry, I'm coming
that's
late.
fair.
Okay, so are we close, any more comments? Okay, so I move to close the public hearing at,
Deidre,
yes.
sorry, I had my hand up. This
Oh,
is
I'm
Dorothy.
sorry.
That's okay. This is Dorothy Ziegelbauer. I just had a few comments, I guess. One thing is, it appears as though we're writing this and we live in a highly blighted community and we really need to put this new law in place to enforce all these egregious properties that we have, which I would be surprised if that's actually the case, but some of the specifics within the law are rather concerning. I mean, we live, most of us, either adjacent to the forest or very close to Sterling Forest. And as an example, saying that you are responsible for not having ticks or mosquitoes or flies in your yard is virtually impossible, even if you have someone come and spray for those things. So having that in the code, like, I get it if you have stagnant standing water and you have to get rid of that standing water and that enables that, but I think there should be tighter language around that, because I don't know, you get some crazy code enforcement person in the future and they say, oh, my neighbor has too many mosquitoes, and the law would allow that to be, go after those type of violations, which I know is extremely subjective and very, out there and probably not very likely. But frankly, the law, the way that it's written, would allow that, and that's somewhat concerning. And the same, I would say, goes for specific things like homeowners who, need to repoint their brick and they have a crack. If you look at the specific language in that law, it looks as though the town can tell you, oh, you have to go repoint this brick, and if you don't, then we can do it for you. Now, would that happen? Perhaps not, but my point is that it's written into the law that way in its current form, which feels very overreaching.
Dorothy, we are The reason we're not voting on this tonight is so that we can revisit the law and tighten up the language.
Okay.
Okay, so I wasn't aware of that. So there is apparently some redundancy contained in the local law, the draft local law that we probably need to review. Did you guys?
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
what we
talk about
said.
that?
some
Okay.
ambiguity that
Yeah, we
I
just
think
wanted
everyone
to
would
get some
prefer wasn't
comments.
in there.
Okay, I agree, yeah.
Yeah.
Get it
Yeah,
right.
the only other thing that I would say is, you know, there are some specific things in there that, you know, they seem to pertain to homeowners as well as owners of properties that have apartments or, you know, duplexes or what have you, where they're renting part of the property. And, you know, those more stringent controls on specific rental properties make a little more sense to me than having it broadly apply to all homeowners in the community.
Okay, fair points.
All right, so if you're gonna keep the public hearing open then?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not gonna
We'll
close it
vote on
tonight.
it
We're
at the
just gonna
next-
adjourn it and keep the
This
public
gives us
hearing open.
the opportunity to
Yeah.
tighten things up.
All right,
based on
thank you.
the comments.
So we'll just carry it over to 9th.
Okay.
Okay.
You know that. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm passing the baton over back to.
No,
Dave.
you keep going. You presided from the beginning, so you keep presiding.
Okay.
But
There should be a motion.
yeah, we need to make a motion to
Okay.
keep the
Continue the
public hearing.
on whatever the next date is at 7 PM.
I think it's
July
July 9th.
July
Yeah.
9th, yes.
Yes. So I'd like to make
That's-
a motion to carry the public hearing over to July 9th. We'll have a chance to review the law and vote on it at that time. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right,
Moving on.
okay, continue.
So, department updates. It's your turn, Rob.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As you can see, and anybody that came here tonight, we are chip sealing the roads in the downtown area. We are finished with the west side of 17 at the moment. We're in the East Village, should finish East Village tomorrow. Stone Ridge and Stevens Lane, hopefully to finish them all tomorrow. And that's where we are with that. Next, the 7th of January, we should be starting the culvert pipe on Ben Meadow.
July.
So,
July.
July, I'm sorry, yes. Anybody that believes they're gonna drive on Benjamin Meadow Road will not get very far. The road's gonna be closed on both ends so that we can complete our work. As far, not just barricaded, I'm putting physical, barriers so that people can't drive on it. We're calling 911, we're letting the police know, the emergency services, school buses in case there's any, I don't know how it works, summer school, things going or whatever. So, and we'll have the road closed, hopefully have it open by September 1st. And that's
Okay.
where we are with that. So.
Cool.
We will be in about a week or so, we'll start sweeping all the loose stone up downtown. Now, I'm sure I'm gonna get calls because the Eagle Valley people called quite a bit last year. So I'm sure I'm gonna get calls that there's loose stone and it's hitting my tires or my bumper or something, but we will get on it in about a week, start picking up all the loose stone.
Okay.
Okay.
It looks great, by the way.
It
Did a
does.
good job.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
For another 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Right in our rotation process.
It must have been hotter than Hades too,
It
with
was-
dealing
I
with,
felt for you today.
dealing with hot
I really
tar.
did.
And
saw
I
you
noticed
out
the
there.
gully washer kind of rinsed all the dust out of it now, so it's kind of pristine, so, yeah. Thank you,
Okay.
Rob.
Thank you, Rob. Marissa?
Nothing, it's gathering, so
Okay.
save my time, defer my time.
Okay. I guess that's the department updates. we're moving on to the agenda. Is any comments on the agenda? No, well, moving on to agenda item number 1, resolution determining the validity of a petition for a proposition to increase the town board budgetary allocation for the Tuxedo Park Library. So, Diane, you want to tell us a little bit about what this means?
Well, let's make the motion and then we
Oh,
can
I'm
do
making
that
I'm
discussion.
making a motion. Do I have a second?
Second,
Thank you.
discussion. man.
Discussion, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right up here. Yeah, just press the little button to turn screen.
Hi, good evening. My name is Diane Loomis. I'm the director of the Tuxedo Park Library.
Can you hit your button?
She's got it.
Okay, thank you.
Good, okay. So tonight's just another step in the library's process to put our budget proposition on the November ballot. We gave the information to Marissa like we've done for the last 20 years. And I believe after tonight, you'll be sending the information on up to the Orange County Board of Elections. And that's a bit of a summary of it, so.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So, any questions?
Not for
All in
me.
favor?
Aye.
Agenda item number 2 is a resolution to waive the 30-day waiting period for the liquor license application. My understanding this is for the Renaissance Festival.
Really? What, I mean, do we have any more information? I thought they already had a liquor license. What are we changing? What are we amending?
They just sent us some information about moving the location, I think.
Oh, it's a location
It's a
change.
location
Okay.
change within the area.
Because I think they have
They do.
a beer and wine license only. They don't have spirits. So is this to amend spirits or is this location?
I sent the application. We're going to pull it up.
Yeah, please. So, I'm making a motion for the town board of the town of Tuxedo to agree to waive the 30-day municipal notification period for application for the Renaissance Entertainment Productions, also known as the Blue Boar Inn.
Blue
Do I
Boar.
have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion, and Marissa's
Yeah.
gonna pull that up.
The Blue Boar Inn, I'm not familiar with, you know, I've been to the, you know, I couldn't tell you if it's on, you know, what street up there, but, so if that's all, I guess that's what I need to be clear on. They need to be clear on, is it a location change or an addition? Is it an upgrade to the actual license?
Upgrade to the license.
So it's a
From
serve
beer and wine
spirits.
to liquor?
And this is, they have to notify the municipality, and what you would do tonight is either make them wait 30 days and wait for them to send their application to the liquor authority, or waive the 30-day period and allow them to send their application.
So we don't really have a say
Oh,
on
that's
what
just
they
one-
do, it's
yeah.
just whether or not they're
Yeah.
can send it to
Oh,
the
okay.
state.
That's good to know.
The application was sent to the police department, they kind of, look over it, Rick had no issues with it. But to my knowledge, there's really nothing that you could, other than making them wait.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
so all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, agenda item number 3 is a resolution to appoint the summer camp employees. I'm gonna make a motion to appoint summer camp employees, which includes recreation aides, the lifeguards, water safety instructor, medical director, summer camp director, and the assistant summer camp director for our summer camp. The motion to the town board for the town of Tuxedo hereby appoints the names and positions listed within this below for the 2025 summer camp staff for the full period of June 18th through August 11th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions?
I don't, I
Discussion?
guess, you know, I just want to know if it fits in the budgetary constraints would be my only question, right? I'm certain that it wouldn't be on here if it doesn't, but I'd like some affirmation and I can do that after the fact, so.
So we need to ask for a P&L for the
Yeah,
camp.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Contingent, we can vote on a contingent to the P and L being there.
yeah, so all in favor?
Aye.
Now we're moving to the town board updates.
Okay,
Where do we
start with that way.
Yeah. Adam.
Adam,
Good evening, everyone. Some updates on Tuxedo Union Free School District. First, I want to congratulate the graduating seniors tonight. This is a significant achievement, and we wish them the best in their future endeavors. Recently, I spoke about, a couple months ago at one of the meetings, Tuxedo Union Free School District Board of Education reached out to Greenwood Lake Union Free School District to explore potential collaboration and support for a comprehensive study on the centralization of our district and Greenwood Lake. While Greenwood Lake has expressed complete satisfaction with their current arrangements with Warwick Central School District and Chester Academy, they have indicated a willingness to consider the results of a study that evaluates all possibilities which could lead to constructive discussions in the future. Additionally, it's important to note that the school budget has faced challenges, having been voted down twice. As a result, the Tuxedo Union Free School District will be operating under a contingency budget for the 2025-2026 school year. Addressing our school district situation is crucial for maintaining the quality of education we provide. To facilitate these discussions and explore innovative solutions, I plan to propose forming a committee of key community stakeholders once the new school board members take their seats on July 1st. This committee will focus on gathering input and ideas from all segments of our community, ensuring a diverse range of perspectives are considered. Of course, with the town board support. Town board support would be vital in moving this initiative forward. I think this is something very important, and we're at a very critical point here in our town with this school district. So that is the end of my report. I'll keep everybody updated moving forward.
Well, I think that's a great idea.
I do too. So, man,
I don't have anything
You're
for
good.
tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chris?
I don't have anything for tonight.
just to echo Councilman Iron's comments, I just came back from graduation and gee whiz, we got deluged on right before it started, so it was a delay. And right at the end, when they threw their hats in the air, deluged again, everybody ran out of there. It was like perfect timing. But once again, congratulations to the class of 2025. And that's pretty much all.
Okay, my turn. First of all, the Eagle Scouts put in a sundial in the pollination meadow. Thank you very much to the highway department. They could not thank enough of how much you contributed to that program. And the pollination meadow really looks beautiful. And it's the first nature trail in the United States, the first marked nature trail in the United States. And they're in the process, and I actually hiked it with Claudia, of putting in a loop in that whole area. And it's really it's a wonderful place. So thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
And they're going to have an opening
It looks
for
great.
the Eagle Scout who did the program, and it's really nice. So I recommend everybody go take a look at the pollination meadow. Aside from that, we are scheduling our next public workshop for because we are going to be applying once again for the New York Forward grant, which you have a mandatory 2 to 3 workshops that you have to comply with for all the residents. And at that workshop, we'll talk about our current state, where we are with the revitalization program, where we are with Powerhouse Park, and the renovation there, because we are starting to move forward with Powerhouse Park and what we're going to do there, as well as the Riverwalk. So it'll give everybody an opportunity to see all of the plans that we have been working on and make comments as to whether or not they think it's a good idea, they think it's a bad idea. We'll talk about how we plan on funding, and that will be July 29th, 7 o'clock. Please come.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Here, you doing it here?
Yes, Town Hall. Okay, moving on. So now, I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes of the, let's see, last town, regular bi-monthly town board meeting held on June 11th. Do I have a second?
Second.
The foregoing resolution was adopted. No, I'm reading that. So do I, does everyone, what is it?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I'll abstain.
Yeah. Okay. I am making a motion to approve the vouchers that have been audited by the town board and are hereby approved for payment. And the claim numbers are 201-292-4891 through 201-292-4958. Total abstract is $113,093.72. All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
You got it.
I did get a second.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I thought I did. Okay. So now we're open for public comments.
So I'm Marie May. I live in Southfields. I have a question about, or a suggestion. I know you are opening up the town code for some tweaking or whatever. I'm on the zoning board of appeals, and there is an issue about a cell tower that is going to be put in a place where if it falls over, there's homes. And they want a variance and whatever. And so one thing is like, that law does not include homes in so I'll read to you what it's code 98.21G6A1. And it says, in order to protect the health, safety, and welfare of children who may be injured by falling ice or debris, all wireless communication towers shall be a distance of no less than 350 feet from the nearest property line of a school, daycare center, camp, public park, or playground. And says nothing about homes. And, we're in a town where we're surrounded by forests, or in other places, towers want to come up. I mean, it would make sense to me that if it just so happens that some of the families that are worried about this have young children. So I was thinking maybe we should add homes as well as this other things to that code. My comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Zoom land?
Hi, Deidre. Susan Reef here. Hello,
Susan.
everybody. Not a question, just a comment. I want to just say thank you so much for all the work you're doing on the river walk and the parks and just the whole revitalization of the town. It's really exciting and it's wonderful. And I would just like to say if there's any way I can help volunteer, I would be more than happy to do that.
Great, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Deirdre, it's Michelle Lindsay. Would the July 29th meeting also be possible to include discussion of renewable of community choice aggregation and community solar?
Well, let's take a look at the agenda and see how many things are on it.
Okay.
And then we'll decide.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Any other comments? Okay, well, our favorite time. I'm making a motion to adjourn the meeting of the town board. At what time is it?
8 or 9.
8:09 PM. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.